All right, let's get right into it. Italy's government has given its navy the green light to blockade migrant boats. And wow, is it causing a stir across Europe? A lot of the conversation online is being driven by one particular viral video analysis. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack that source's core arguments piece by piece to really get a handle on the thinking behind these massive headlines. And the source video kicks things off with this absolute bombshell of a claim. I mean, listen to this. It frames the policy not as just some local Italian issue, but as a turning point for modern Europe. Right from the get-go, the stakes are incredibly high. The suggestion is that this could literally change the rulebook on how nations defend their own borders.
Okay, so here's how the source lays out its argument, broken down into 5 parts. First up, we're going to look at the actual bill, the nitty-gritty details. Then we'll explore the much bigger idea being used to justify it, this defense of civilization. After that, we'll dig into the specific cultural threat the video claims Italy is facing. We'll also define this key term they use, civilizational populism. And finally, we'll zoom out and see why the source claims this is way bigger than just Italy. It's about the entire continent.
All right, first up, the bill itself. So what's actually in this new legislation? Forget the headlines for a second. The source gives a pretty detailed breakdown of the new powers the Italian government now has. Let's dive in. So according to the source, there are a bunch of key things in this bill. Of course, it authorizes the Navy to set up these blockades. There are some hefty fines, up to 50,000 euros, and they can even confiscate boats. But the source really zooms in on 2 things it says are game changers. First, the bill specifically goes after NGO rescue ships. The video even calls them a de facto ferry service. And second, and this is a big one, it allows Italy to transport migrants to other countries, like Albania, for processing. That's a massive shift in policy. Okay, but the source makes it clear this isn't just about policy and legal details. No, it's framed as something much, much bigger. We're talking about a full-blown ideological battle for the soul of Italy, a fight for its very identity, with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni leading the charge. And to make that point, the video highlights this powerful quote from Meloni herself. You see, the argument presented is that this blockade isn't just about border control. It's being sold as a defense of Western civilization itself, this idea of sovereignty, freedom, and individual rights. So the justification gets kicked up from a simple security issue to this grand, almost historic mission. Now, if you're going to make such a grand argument about defending civilization, you need to point to a threat, right? Well, that's exactly where the source goes next. It starts using statistics to paint a picture of what it describes as a massive challenge to Italy's cultural identity. The first number the video puts on the table is this, 2.6 million. That's the estimated number of Muslims currently living in Italy. The source uses this as the starting point for its argument about a major demographic change. And to give that some context, that's about 4.3% of the total population. But the video doesn't stop there. It then looks to the future. And this is where the source really tries to create a sense of urgency. It projects that by 2050, that number could jump to 10%. So the issue is framed not just as something happening now, but as a long-term and even accelerating challenge to the country's cultural fabric. Then the source brings up what it calls a major point of friction, and it's a big one. Even though Islam is the second largest religion in the country, it isn't officially recognized by the Italian state. Think about that. It means no public funding for mosques, no state recognition of holidays. The video presents this as a core source of tension in society. So what do you call this kind of political movement? Well, the source doesn't just make up a name. It actually pulls out a specific academic term and even credits the famous political scientist Samuel Huntington for the idea. And that term is civilizational populism. Here's how the source defines it. It's the belief that your civilization, in this case European civilization, is facing an existential threat from outsiders. But here's the kicker. It also claims this threat is only possible because a corrupt globalist elite is letting it happen, all for their own power and profit. The video then lays out the supposed logic of this globalist elite theory step by step. Okay, here's how it goes, according to the source. Step 1, open borders bring in a ton of cheap labor. Step 2, this drives up corporate profits. Step 3, some of that money is then funneled to politicians to make sure they keep the borders open. And step 4, if any regular citizens complain about this cycle, they're immediately shut down by being called racist or xenophobic. That's the whole mechanism the source presents. All right, now for the final section. The source zooms out and makes a pretty bold claim. What's happening in Italy isn't some isolated thing. Instead, it's framed as Italy being
just the tip of the spear for a huge movement that's spreading all across Europe. And to argue that this tough new approach is effective, the source points to these numbers. Check this out. Sea arrivals reportedly dropped from over 157,000 in 2023 to a projection of around 60,000 for the following years. I mean, that's a dramatic drop, and the video presents it as proof positive that the policy is working.
And to really hammer home that tip of the spear idea, the source connects Giorgia Meloni to other big names in European populist politics. It specifically mentions leaders like Orban in Hungary, Le Pen in France, and Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, basically saying they're all part of the same civilizational movement. The implication is that this is a coordinated pushback happening across the continent.
So in the end, the source doesn't just offer an analysis, it presents a stark choice. On one side, you have what it calls bold action to preserve a civilization. On the other, hesitation that invites fragmentation. And it leaves us with the core question at the heart of this whole debate. How will nations try to balance these powerful competing pressures?